Good evening. Welcome to the Greenfield Public Schools School Committee meeting. It's Wednesday, June 8th, 2022 at 6 p.m. We are at the John Zon Community Center, 35 Pleasant Street. Per open meeting law, any member of the public may make an audio or video recording of this meeting. We will move right into our agenda and the roll call and the call to order. Secretary Ekstrom.
Thank you. Member Deneve.
Here.
Member Ekstrom, I am here. Member Johnson-Mossad.
Here.
Member Martini.
Here.
Chair Poyetti.
Here.
Vice Chair Wall.
Here.
Mayor Wiedegartner.
Here.
We are all present and have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. We're called to order at 6:01 p.m. and we will go into item number 2, the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, May 11th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So move.
From the mayor, and a second.
Second.
That was
From-
Wall, by the way.
Oh, Member Wall, sorry. I didn't even look up. And any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, we'll go into a vote. Any abstentions?
I was not here.
The mayor is going to abstain. Any noes on the minutes? And the rest of it, that would be 6 votes yes. Okay, and we are into item number 3, which is public comment, and you're not, yes. Okay, there appears to be no member of the public here for public comment, so we move into item number 4, our report from the student representatives to the committee. Take it away, Brielle and Shane, thank you.
Struggle with the microphone turning it on every single time. You'd think I'd learn by now. But to begin, we're going to start with Student Council. Student Council attended the WMASC conference and had a successful spring conference. The annual banquet was on Sunday, May 30th, and class officer elections will be held in the fall. The winner of the annual class cup was the senior class, and they will be able to attend a free screening of Jurassic World on Friday. They will continue to volunteer in the community this summer in the Relay for Life and the Big Brothers Big Sisters 0.5K.
For Ckla, they've elected new officers for next year, and they're going to meet soon to discuss the events in the fall.
French Club held its last meeting of the year yesterday and discussed events and fundraisers for next year, as well as how to better incorporate student leadership. We will hold our end of the year celebration on Thursday from 5:30 to 7 and enjoy food, music, and games as we celebrate another awesome French-filled year. And for NHS is participating in the Relay for Life at the fairgrounds this Friday through Saturday.
For sports, the girls softball team won their Class C Western Mass Championship against the Franklin County Tech. And now we're in it's called the Elite 8 for the state championship, and we play Friday, home at 6. You have to purchase tickets online, though. So, and then for track, Leaview placed first in the state championship for high jump, and he also beat the school record, which was his own record, in the 110 hurdles with a time of 14.87, which placed him second in the Division 6 state meet. Tess also beat the school record, which was also her own, with a throw of 38 feet and 11.5 inches, winning her first in the Division 6 championship.
For band, the band had the band concert at the end of May last month, which went very well. Great work to everyone involved, and thank you for everybody who attended.
For the Library Club, at the end of May, Library Club hosted Bubba from Greenfield Games, who taught the group several fun board games. We had our final meeting on Tuesday to begin planning what we want to do next year.
Spectrum is marching in the Franklin County Pride Parade on Saturday, June 11th, along with GMS students.
Green Room has started registration for their summer programming, which will include canoeing, rock climbing, hiking, and more. There is only one slot left, so make sure to sign up if you have any interest.
And finally, last Saturday marked the end of the class of 2022's time at GHS, with their graduation being held that day. Speeches were given by class president Christian LaRouche, salutatorian Andy Bostrom, well, his brother, because Andy unfortunately wasn't able to make it, valedictorian Rory Cronin Townsend, and student body president Haley Campbell. The awards night was held a few days prior, where the accomplishments and accolades of the students of that class were recognized. We wish the best of luck to all the seniors going into the future. They all have bright paths ahead. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Now, I guess I have a question. So, Brielle, you are rolling off for next year, is that right? Or are you staying on?
There. I am rolling off.
You're
yes.
rolling off because I heard a rumor that it's going to be someone else who I know,
Yeah.
right? Are we allowed to say the transition? I'll break the rules. I'll take the fault for it. So I heard it's going to be Sean Babineau and Mr. Toomey again. Terrific. Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us this year.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right. Come back and visit, when you have a public comment or something. All right? Thank you, guys. Okay, the item number 5, reports of the administration, and we'll go to AASKP for the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning report.
Thank you. Update on the ELA curriculum for grades K through 7. Field testing for Ckla, Amplify, and ARC Core was completed on May 13th. I met then with all of the field testers, the coaches, and the interventionists. We reviewed the 2 programs. We compared the programs to the district's priorities and parameters that we have set out all year, and how each curriculum program met those needs. And after that review, the district is happy to announce the adoption of Ckla for grades K through 5 and Amplify for grades 6 and 7. So we're very excited about that. Professional development, the district completed the final meetings with the Collaborative for Educational Services on its social justice work and with Dr. Lourdes Alvarez-Ortiz on trauma-informed instructional strategies. Dr. DeBarge and I will be following up with both CES and Lourdes before the end of June to review the year at hand and determine next steps. Grades K through 4 teachers, along with elementary principals, engaged in professional development on May 27th on teaching literacy in grades K through 4 in the science of reading. Donna Goldstein, a DESE literacy content specialist, launched the PD virtually, and she reviewed the Mass Literacy Guide and the DESE website with a lot of supports for teachers, which was great. The teachers then read and reviewed the 4 shifts document, and grade level teams were able to have some time to discuss and collaborate on changes and alterations to instruction that will be necessary in the coming years and that really will align with Ckla in K through 2. So that's exciting. Grants, we received approval for our $200,000 ELA grant for Ckla and Amplify, which is exciting, and the funds also included support for professional development costs for the year, so teachers will be supported by company representatives throughout the year in the implementation of the new curriculum, which they were very excited about. The accelerated math grant was also approved to purchase illustrative math for grades 5 through 7 and to continue with the Eureka math curriculum for grades K through 4. DESE also supported the purchase of a Zern online math learning platform for grades K through 5, and that's going to allow kids to delve deeper into some math concepts, or if they want some acceleration, if they have extra time in class, it's an online program, and the teachers were excited to be able to have access to that. It also can help students who may be struggling and need some remediation in other areas. We are waiting with bated breath on the civics grant. We have applied for up to $20,000 to continue our civics education in grades 8 through 12, and they presumably will be letting us know by June 30th, but it's DESE, so we'll wait and see. Library assessments, the district is beginning its weeding of Federal Street School's library, which was the next on the list library that needed the most attention. We have begun working with Jess Pollock at the high school to replenish and refresh the collection at Newton Elementary since that weeding project is done. And we actually are looking forward to the improvement in all of our libraries for our students for the coming school year. And then lastly, the mentors and mentees and I, the district had our final meeting yesterday. We celebrated with an ice cream social. We collaborated on a positive memory from this school year. I'd like to thank Ms. Raincourt's grade 4 class. They made a tree for us so that we could put our memories on a memory tree. So they were very excited that we took a picture for them and got to share that tree with all of the adults. I think it needs to be noted that we had 18 qualified mentors in district, and they served 56 mentees this year. So the work that they did, not only to, do what they needed to do instructionally in their job, but they supported many other new teachers this year, and I think they ought to be commended for that. They did a great job. Lastly, I want to recognize Mike Browning and Gina Johnson, who were my 2 mentees this year, so it was a pleasure to mentor them. We participated in the DESE PLN for induction and mentoring of principals, and we were part of the development of the new mentoring handbook that's going to be rolled out by DESE for administrators. So that was exciting to be on the in the know for what's coming ahead. And they really did a great job, and I hope they learned a lot from me, but I certainly learned a lot from both of them. So it was nice to do that this year. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ASKP. Do we have questions from the school committee? Member Martini, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the ELA curriculum. Firstly, I'm just really thrilled that the district is making this investment in a science-backed curriculum, and I think that's going to make a huge difference for our kids. I wanted to ask what curricular materials are going to be replaced by this, and what is going to be done with those materials?
Well, as you know, we have struggled with having curriculum materials in this department, which is why we participated in this network this year to really adopt something. There is some outdated reading street materials in some buildings, but we have asked the elementary principals to just send out a message to folks as they're departing for the school year and to put things in a central location. And then my admin assistant is going to help out, and we're going to make a list that will be brought to you to be declared surplus, but we're just at the beginning of that stage.
Okay. I understand there have been materials as disparate as Fountas and Pinnell products to Spire, which are very divergent types of programs and have been used at different schools in the district. So I'm just wondering if Ckla is going to replace all of that, and this will now be the universal or kind of standard curriculum across all our elementary schools.
So Ckla is going to be the resource for our core curriculum, but one of the things that we'll be doing this summer is looking at what are appropriate resources to use for our tiered instruction. So at this point, a decision hasn't been finalized in terms of Spire. Fountas and Pinnell is not of the same philosophy as Ckla and some of the other recommendations that are being made by the DESE literacy specialists. So in all likelihood, that won't be remaining, but there are tiers of intervention that we need to identify resources for. So that's work in progress. But right now, the old wit and wisdom, the reading street, things that have been, here and there without uniformity are definitely going to be purged. And we'll either recycle them, or we'll look to see if any of the publishers are willing to look at them and give us credit for future purchases for them. We haven't, as Karen said, we haven't gotten that far. Right now, we're just looking for piles in one spot, which I will count as an absolute incredible accomplishment if we get everything piled up in one spot.
Well,
it's the
thank
beginning.
you. You just answered my next question, which was what was going to happen with Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction.
Work in progress.
So we'll look forward to that. And lastly, I wondered whether this shift is going to impact what assessment tools are used and what the plans are in terms of assessments.
CKLA has embedded assessments in the curriculum itself, but the district will still be doing map testing, DIBELS, the composite score in DIBELS is still something we're going to rely on with our interventionists. We want to have formative data that teachers can use in real time to address the needs of their students, but we also want to rely on summative data that can guide progress throughout the year so that we can see where our students are at intervals during the school year.
Okay, great. And specifically with regard to the F&P benchmark assessment system, which seems to still be in use, at least by some teachers, is that going to be replaced or not be used anymore with this shift?
Well, as I said, the Fountas and Pinnell, the philosophy of guided reading and is not consistent with the approach through CKLA, so that's not the approach that we're taking.
Okay. I just had one other question about the professional development. There is a minority of students, but a significant one, who have a learning disability that impacts reading. And some of those students need a more intensive type of instruction, which requires a really high level of training, as I'm sure you know. So I know that the district has previously sponsored a cohort of staff to become trained in Orton-Gillingham, for example, and however that some of those staff have left. And so I'm just wondering, do we have a plan to have ongoing PD happening in order to maintain enough staff who have that high level of training or certification to support those students?
That's a conversation that's ongoing between Dr. Dickinson and I.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, Member Deneve, go ahead.
Hi, I just have a quick one. First of all, congrats on all the grants. That must feel really good. And I had a question about the professional development. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Collaborative for Education Services, that's the same company that did the listening sessions earlier, right? Okay, so I was just curious, when you say that you're going to follow up with the entities, does that involve the listening sessions that happened earlier? I know that kids took a part of them and parents took part in them, and so I'm just curious because I never heard anything about that.
We've been working with that information with CES, with the staff throughout the year, so that's going to be part of the work. You'll hear when I do my update about our administrative retreat, which is sort of an oxymoron. It's not really a retreat. It's 3 days. Yeah, 3 days of a lot of hard work, long meetings, but taking that work and making plans of how we move forward internally. But we will have the executive summary that can be shared. But the work has been going all the way through the most recent staff meetings. So, but we'll have that to share out in this summary form.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Member Johnson-Musad, go ahead.
Thanks for the report. I noticed that, I think that in addition to being a mentor to a couple of mentees, Karen, that you also were mentored this year. We're coming up in the end of your first year in this role, I think. How's it been going? And have you been getting assistance from mentoring yourself and your... I
even talked to her one time.
Well, I mean, I know the superintendent and you are in close conversations a lot, but I thought there was also a group outside of the superintendent who was assisting you.
Yes, I was fortunate enough to participate. It was an assistant superintendent leadership series. We had 8 sessions. Assistant superintendents from across Massachusetts. There was about 60 to 70 of us that participated, where we would meet once a month for 8 months and have guest speakers and just really learn a lot about everyone going through their either first year in this job or, muddling through year 2 after a pandemic. So it was very helpful, very enriching and rewarding, and I was very happy to be part of that group. It's great because it created a collaboration of people I can reach out to at any time and say, hey, what are you doing? Talk to the woman from Quincy because they adopted CKLA before we did, so we got to sit online with some teachers that were already using it. It was great just to have those connections. So while Dr. DeBarge and I talk minute by minute most days, it was nice to have an outside group as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just as a note, too, around, Karen also participated in a few of the meetings of the Connecticut Valley Superintendent's Roundtable, and next year she'll be added as an associate member so that she can officially attend as the topics relate, but she'll have the opportunity and will be an official part of the group. Surprise. Merry Christmas. You just got it. Yes.
So you're not just crashing then?
No, she will not have to be an invited member. She will be an assumed member, so.
Any other questions? If everyone's done, I have one. You all good? Boring budget question? Sorry.
I was going to go turn the TV on because.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. The grants and the changes to the curriculum, the adoption of the new curriculums, do they cover the whole cost? They do?
They do. The initial cost for both is quite hefty to invest, which is why we're quite thankful that we received both of those grants. And then the cost to continue them over the course of the years declines greatly. So we're very excited that for the implementation, we've been able to secure those funds. And Christine and I have, talked and tried to map out how we will sustain them because we want continuity with the curriculum and have it remain for years to come.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Do we have to stop for them?
Let's not, because there's not much happening up there, and I may have to consult with Mr. Fleury because they're supposed to be there.
That's a lovely screensaver. Yeah.
Yes, isn't it lovely? That's less.
I was trained several weeks ago.
If-
Don't actually.
Oh, well,
I called in.
Mayor, that was not funny to do. You could actually get that going. So let me.
At City Hall, it's much easier. We just hit a button.
That I was supposed to be able to. We'll just
take a pause because you're next.
I can talk while.
You should.
Oh, yeah. It's okay.
Okay.
I can't do much. Fernando likely will have to log in the.
Oh, in the background and log in there. Yeah. Okay.
So. Well, to recognize all of the students was just fantastic, and the day couldn't have been better. So, and we appreciated the work of the DPW and the rec department for getting that impressive stage set up and the sound and everything. That made it all that much more special. We were also able to participate in awards night, which was very exciting, and to recognize the number of seniors who got awards that evening. And one of our softball players was still in uniform under her graduation gown with eye black proudly worn for the ceremony, so that was also nice to see. The students were great, and Ms. Silk, Tammy Silk from the high school, got kudos from Derek about all the work she had put in, so I want to share that with all of you as well. She really did an outstanding job on that and graduation. So the Film Fest was held. I want to share it was fantastic to see the artwork, the food that was there. Karen and I weren't able to stay to watch all of the films, but there is a link on the website under Family and Community if anybody wants to watch all the student films. So in my report, Brendan, Jarrett, and Rachel are commended for the work that they did, especially because they did it in a condensed time frame. So that was fantastic. The food service department is very proudly going to be hosting Summer Eats, and I will say Greta and the food service staff have been doing an amazing amount of preparation and advertisement and gathering community partners to participate in the kickoff event, which will be June 22nd at the Green River Swimming and Rec area. So I would invite all of you to wander over between 4 and 6. There's a lot of community agencies that will have tables there to be resources for families. Greta has arranged for the waste from that day to be composted by a local company. Lots of prizes to be given away, and we're going to have the information about Summer Eats on the website and going out to students. So we're hoping that we get a lot of subscription to the Summer Eats program. And two of our schools will be sites for our students who are participating in summer school, as well as community. They'll be done in shifts so that they're in different times. And then Newton will also have an outdoor site for Summer Eats. So there'll be lots of opportunity for the community. Greenfield Middle School hosted a step-up day for the incoming fifth graders. Lynn reported they had over 100 people that attended that, which is very impressive. So she and her staff are commended for that planning. And then Lynn and Derek coordinated to do a 7th grade step-up visit to the high school, which included lunch for the 7th grade students. So they got a view of the high school. So we're hoping that being able to visit both schools for both groups will take a little off the top as they look to transition for next year. So I know that doing those types of things is a lot of work, so they're greatly appreciated. Okay, senior awards. All right, so that was that. The NESDEC study is supposed to be shown this evening. We'll see. Karen's talking to Fernando, the IT director for the city, who I believe completely will save us. So that, just as a reminder, it's the summary of the best use of educational facilities, and these are options for the committee's consideration. That's not anything that would be expected that you folks would make any decisions about tonight. It's a summary of their findings and points for your consideration. I know all of you know, but this is a long process to go through and to gather. There's a lot of information that we will have to gather in addition to what NESDEC has. And so, tonight is but the first piece. So, and then staffing, we have a few updates for staffing. Darlene Rehor will be joining us as the new Newton School principal. Mel is retiring after a long career in education, and we're very happy for her that she'll be able to enjoy her retirement. But Darlene was one of the finalists forwarded to me by the committee, and I was very pleased to offer her the position. She toured Newton with Mel yesterday, so was able to visit some people, and she'll be officially joining us July 1st. And then we are just about finished with the interviews for the new IT director. We have one more interview on Tuesday, and then I expect we'll have a candidate that I'm making an offer to shortly thereafter. And we are very happy to have gotten the mayor's budget proposal for the schools was approved. So we are moving forward with some of the positions that were added into the budget, including library media specialists at the middle school and the elementary school. And it's technology, but it's the manufacturing. I apologize. It's manufacturing technology, I think, is the actual tech. Oh, it worked. Whatever he just did, whatever you did. Yes, Ms. Patnode, whatever you fixed made it work. And the additional PE health teacher at the high school is also posted, along with 2 additional special education teachers. So we're looking forward to filling those positions. So just a couple of other points. We have advertised for the school choice spots that you folks voted for last meeting. We have a very tight timeline for summer cleaning of our buildings, and we have summer school taking up almost all of the high school and all of AEL. So what we're asking of staff, I'm sharing this in case anybody's looking to visit our buildings this summer, we're asking that staff, pardon? Bring a broom. No, well, yes, basically. We're going to have staff not in the buildings during the summer until Eric, our facilities director, gives the all clear that a building has been finished. We have some capital projects that are going to be happening, like floor replacements, stair tread upgrades, and it's going to be very tight to get everything done prior to the start of the school year. So to facilitate that, we're asking staff to not come into the buildings after next Friday, which I realize can be a challenge, but we're really looking to get things set up in a time frame where we can have teachers be able to come back before the start of school to set up their rooms. So we'll need to help the custodians get things, not physically help, thankfully, but help by kind of staying out of the way. And I will be scheduling a visit to the buildings for the committee prior to the start of school. We'd love for you to see the results of the capital projects that get done. So if you can hold, I will send out an invitation as soon as we're able to coordinate a time. And then I already talked about our administrative retreat. This is the last week of our pooled testing, and as a note, DESE is not providing testing supplies after this academic year. So, we'll have to, the nurses and I will have to have conversations this summer about our thoughts going forward. But if we will continue symptomatic testing for our summer school students, just symptomatic testing. So, it's quite an expense. The last mask order that was put through was about $10,000. So it's a substantial cost to the district to continue providing all of that. And then, no big surprise to any of you, but I share it anyway, June 16th is our last day of school. Any of you with kids know exactly to the minute when the last day of school is. So it's a half day for students. And lastly, although not comprehensively, but I don't want to finish this last school committee meeting of the year without acknowledging the incredible, immense work that was done by every single staff person in this district during the year. This is a year like has never been seen in education, and I hope wholeheartedly is never seen again. And it took the work of every single person in this district to help each other get through the year and to help our kids get through the year. So I am extremely fortunate to have been part of this group, and they have done an extraordinary job on behalf of the students of Greenfield. So that's it for me, because my biggest update is NASDAQ, and Karen is on the screen, thankfully. I hope she hears me. Yay. Thank you. Oops, now you broke it.
And are there questions from the school committee for the superintendent? No questions.
You guys just want to hear NASDAQ. I don't blame you. Okay. The presentation is in your packet, a stapled copy. This is Karen Ledoux from NASDAQ. And Karen, you are prepped to share your screen, correct?
I actually cannot. It says the host disabled participant screen sharing, so I don't know what happened.
Okay. Let's wait. Don't make co-host. Give it a whirl now. The magic of technology. I made you a co-host.
Isn't life grand? Don't you love it?
Absolutely. When it works, right?
I just think it's magical at times. So thank you very much. Chris is going to start us off, and then we'll continue to present. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Thank you all from Greenfield for having us here tonight. My name is Chris Malone. I'm from the New England School Development Council. I'm a consultant. With us as well is Karen Leduc, who's a consultant with NASDAQ. Also participating on our team was Nancy Gustafson, who had some input in the report, and certainly our Executive Director, Art Betancourt. So really we want to try to shape, this is a pretty comprehensive report. So we really want to try to shape it for all of you in a brief overview, hit some highlights, and really hope that this report generates some strong conversations going on at the superintendent and school committee and community level. NASDAQ entered into an agreement with the Greenfield Public Schools to conduct a facilities best use study. The goal of the project was to provide a basis for decision-making regarding future grade level reconfigurations, building renovations, and/or construction of alternative facility use. Certainly this is in regarding to long-range planning, but as we look at aspects of this report, there are aspects that may impact more recent planning that may go on, whether it may have to do with assignments to grade levels and buildings in a manner that is consistent with the district's long-term plan. Also looking at budgetary items that may need to be earmarked well into the future for long-range use of the facility. It's really a three-pronged report that goes into depth in regards to Greenfield Public Schools. The first portion is demography. NASDAQ was asked to prepare enrollment projections and to identify demographic factors that affect student enrollment in the Greenfield Public Schools. The NASDAQ team analyzed district and municipal records, including data provided by the Greenfield Public Schools, the U.S. Census Bureau, the Warren Group, HUD, State Department of Education, Town Planner, Building Department, and local realtors. And just a footnote that the current census information out for 2020 was partially in release as of March 17, 2022, and we've included that in this report as well. The report opens with information pertaining to trends, population, and data regarding factors that influence school enrollments. NASDAQ provides an updated 10-year enrollment projection report, including an analysis of any expected student yield from the proposed residential or construction, if applicable. The second portion of this regards the study that is also including analysis of present and planned school programs and the facilities needed to provide these programs. Members of the NASDAQ study team conducted virtual and on-site visits of the Academy of Early Learning Preschool, the Green River School, the Federal Street Elementary School, the Discovery School at Four Corners, Newton Elementary School, the Greenfield Middle School, and the Greenfield High School. Key facility information was reviewed with administrators in each of these schools. And a true hats off to the superintendent and her central office team for accommodating us on our visit and accompanying us. They spent a whole day escorting us to different buildings, and they gave us a great deal of their time, and it's much appreciated, and very much appreciated of the school principals for their time in the study as well. Although the study did not include a capital asset assessment, the NESDEC team did review pertinent facility maintenance and capital improvement needs, information provided by the district. And finally, using information gained from its analysis of the enrollment projections and facility capacity analysis and aligned with current programming, NESDEC developed potential alternatives for the district to review as it moves forward in the development of long-range facility plan. The options that NESDEC team is presenting include bulleted outline description of each option as well as a listing of advantages and challenges. The options are designed to serve as a catalyst for further analysis and discussion. Thus, please remember this document should be considered not as an end product, but rather as a beginning to future plan. So with that, I will turn it over to Karen to talk a little bit more in depth about the demographic information.
Thank you. So Chris has mentioned the sources that we use for the demographic study, and I'm going to do a high-level review. Certainly, we look at the U.S. Census, the U.S. population, and its trends in order to think about how that might inform Greenfield. We also look at New England as the 6 New England states as a geographic reference for you. And you can see Massachusetts has the lowest percent of change in population of those New England districts. Greenfield population is most important to you because these are the potential students that you will have with families moving in. You can see over the last 10 years, the population has hovered around 17,500 with an uptick to 17,768. So some people moved in 2020, not unlike what has been happening in a lot of area districts. The median age of the population is important to consider, and I'm going to draw your attention here for this. The town indicates Greenfield. The median age is 43.7. It is aging over the past 20 years. That has an impact on how old children might be in families, but you are lower than Franklin County, which the median age was 47. Then we'll move on to the general population trends, and this gives you some insights as to the percentage of the population that is school age. So it's the school age children comprise 13% of the Greenfield population. Important to consider that 5.4% of the entire population is below the age of 5. So those students will be coming to Greenfield in the years to come, and then we took the under 18 years and came up with the 13%. And that's an important consideration as you think about next steps for Greenfield. And here we show in the town of Greenfield, 18% of the households have a K-12 students or students in them. And that's an important to consider. But in relation to years past, it's decreasing the number of students in K-12 households. Births are an important consideration because these are your future students. So the the Commonwealth of Massachusetts noted that between 2005 and 2011, there were 188 births per year. That was stable until the same birth rate of 180 through 2017. But we're seeing a decline in births, which means that the kindergarten numbers will start to diminish over the next several years. And that's going to have an impact there. And I'll show you some visuals of the kindergarten enrollment in a second. And you can see the variation in the births over the past 5 years, the range of births from 125 to 183. Important to consider when we're thinking about enrollment projections is the trends in real estate. We know that there are mature buyers who are downsizing. We know that there are millennials, and some of those millennials will have children who are moving into schools. But what we have noticed through our research is that over 80% of the districts, the number of real estate sales is 4 to 5 times larger than the number of building permits. And we'll talk about those building permits in a minute, but that it's important to keep your pulse on what's happening in the real estate sales. So we rely on the Warren Group, which is the publisher of Banker and Tradesman. And you can see between 2001 and 2007, before the 2008 recession, 178 single-family homes were sold, and the median average sales price was $157,000. took a little downturn for the number of units, but the price continued to increase during the recession. Single-family homes between 2013 and 2020, you can see the average sale price is starting to increase to $185,000, and that in 2021, 182 single-family homes were $250,000 and continuing to increase. So the real estate sales are robust. And we also, this is just a graphic of what I just said, but we also spoke to some of the realtors in the area who were extremely helpful to us. And what they noted is, I think what you've been reading in the papers, is that inventory is low, that some sellers are reluctant to put their homes on the market, concerned that they won't be able to purchase a new home. The inventory moves quickly. Most homes are selling between $225,000 and $399,000, and the single-family home sales are above market value and above the asking price. Another aspect of thinking about enrollments, to project the enrollments, is to think about what is under construction. So we consulted with the Greenfield Department of Planning and Development, again, who was extremely helpful to us. And currently, under construction, there are 12 single-family homes permitted comprising that configuration of bedrooms, 1 multi-unit, and there are no new potential scale projects identified. So these permitted single-family homes are projected to have minimal impact on future enrollments. And then here's the building permits as reported by the Housing and Urban Development, and just a little review of the profile of the town of Greenfield. So when we look at doing the enrollment projections, we take into account several things. We look at student migration in and out of schools. We review the stability of grades 1 through 8. So for example, the students in grades 1 through 7 last year, how many retained to transition to grades 2 through 8 in the following year? And Greenfield sees an out-migration of students when it comes to that, as an average of 38 students over the past 8 years. And then the births as they relate to kindergarten enrollments and then housing and urban development. So let's look at these enrollment projections. So this chart shows you the birth year over here. This is the historical enrollment, the number of births, the number of kindergartners. We always look to the right. If we had 196 kindergartners in the 2011-12 school year and only 90 12th graders, you're going to see a surge of students transitioning through. But additionally, you're also seeing that for the historical perspective, if we look at the grade bands, K to 4, you've seen a decline. And that's right here on this historical enrollment. You've seen a decline in grades 5 to 7 and 9 to 12 to the tune of 24.4% averaged over the past 10 years of a decline. And this is just another visual representation of the historical enrollment. But the projected enrollments, you can see here for 2016 that the births were 183 and you enrolled 129 kindergartners. So not all of the students who are born to Greenfield residents stay to enroll in kindergarten. And that's something to consider as you transition and look at the data. So as we looked at these enrollment projections, and we use a cohort survival method. We take the average of either 1 year or 7 years in order to think about the ratio, to think about what's going to be projected. Down here, if you look at K to 4, the most reliable projections are 3 to 5 years out. And in K to 4, over the next 3 years, we're projecting a decline of 65 students over the grades K to 4. Now, we know that those could be spread out. It never is even, so it's not particularly one grade level that's targeted. We can't know that. Grades 5 to 7, it's more stable because you've had the kindergartners going through with the higher numbers. So over the next 3 years, there'll be a 7-student decline, and for 9 through 12, only a 1-student decline over the next 3 years. So you can see that. So it's important that we project over the next 10 years for planning purposes only a 16.7 decline. So things are beginning to stabilize for Greenfield. And there's the projected enrollment, the historical and projected. And here's where you can see where the births and the K enrollments. The births here, the K enrollments are less than the births. And then some additional data that you can look at your leisure. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Chris, who will talk about the school facilities review.
Thanks, Karen. And we're on that second prong of the report. And NESDEC conducted a review of each school facility. The purpose of the school facility review is to maximize educational resources to determine the number of learners that can be reasonably be accommodated at the school building and site. Physical, programmatic, and operational variables were reviewed. Below, you can see a list of elements under physical, programmatic, and operational that we look at, and we look at that for each school. In addition, will be capacity analysis is to review the number of learners that can be reasonably accommodated by a school building and site. We use the term current operating capacity, or the COC. In this case, we count the classrooms using the perspective of the school principal who is creating the schedule for the building. We calculate the capacity by multiplying the maximum class size number by the number of classrooms. Therefore, for the district current operating capacity, we use the numbers for class size in pre-K is 16, kindergarten is 18, grades 1 through 4, 22, and grades 5 through 12, 25. So that's a real important number to look at as far as capacity goes. Another piece of the report revolves around planned operating capacity, which is calculated using the current operating capacity and adjust for current building use, appropriate core and specialized facilities, and adjust for parity and equity among all buildings. Really, when we look at the planned operating capacity, we're looking at the building designed to work in a kind of a perfect world, in an ideal world. And we want to give that feedback because buildings always do change. Educational theory changes. All kinds of aspects feed into this. And we want to make sure we're giving information back that matches how the buildings are used. Also, a quick note that NESDEC advises that the long-term planning districts maintain a minimum of 10% capacity cushion to accommodate for future growth. This is really being prudent about how the buildings are being used long-term and making sure that you're actually looking at the capacity levels and can accommodate with changes. We looked and have individual insights on each school in this report. Some of the schools I will go through very briefly. A couple of them I will drill down a little bit just so you can see how that information flows and how it pertains to each school. For instance, in the Academy of Early Learning preschool, the current enrollment is 87 students, and it has had some recent renovations for lighting and roof. And in the current operating capacity and the planned operating capacity, we're projecting out 112 students. Again, it currently has 87 students. We're looking at a current and planned operating capacity both at 112 students. Again, it will go through further information that drills down for that school, as it will for each school as we go through. The Federal Street Elementary School, I'll talk a little bit more in depth. Again, current enrollment of 203 students, had some fairly recent renovation to roof, boiler, and window replacement. Again, that link between the two schools was constructed in 1989. We've calculated out with the classrooms a current operating capacity of 243 students, and that connects also with the planned operating capacity of also 243 students. So if we drill down a little bit to look at the Federal Street School, what we'll go through as we do with all schools is the number of interchangeable classrooms. Then we specify what some of the additional classrooms are used for. We'll look at the core facilities such as the cafeteria, auditorium, gymnasium, all those pieces, see what their capacity is. In addition, we'll look at that administrative space and try to make a determination how that flows, how that works right now. We'll try to venture into the support staff. Are spaces adequate for what kind of work they're doing? Is the school able to respond to the needs of the staff who then in turn service the students? So it is fairly comprehensive on that aspect. One piece of note, and it's pretty consistent with all the schools around instructional administrative technology. There's a fairly decent amount of devices in the district for students, but it's also fairly clear that educator desktop computers are aging. And although there are a good number of devices for students, there is not a true one-to-one district-wide. So although not included in this report, it may be something the district will want to look at in the future, specifically to look at the technology aspects involved in all of this. We also look at major systems and maintenance, look at the site information. It's fairly consistent to find in most elementary buildings, just the way they work, that drop-off and pickup elements aren't working as designed, or there is just a larger number of parents dropping off than there were when the school was designed. We look at storage. And a quick note around the Federal Street School is that there's two elements, one the nurse's office and one where speech services are conducted, that are located between floors so they don't have accessibility to an elevator. So that's an interesting piece to kind of put forward when doing any type of planning. Next, a little deeper dive into the Discovery School at Four Corners. Again, some fairly recent renovations as far as roof repairs, window upgrades, rooftop unit replacement, air handling units, LED lighting upgrades. Current enrollment is 242 students. We're looking at a current operating capacity of 305 students. We're also looking at a planned operating capacity of 261 students. So let's dive into that piece just a little bit more in depth. What we're seeing, for instance, at the Discovery School at Four Corners is that there is no dedicated space for art, and we have some support staff that are certainly congregated in one area that appears to be inadequate. And we have some concerns about the nurse's office as well. Again, these are pieces that are looking in how the building is being used, what is ideal. In any of these cases, it is a complete hats off to the superintendent and to the building principal for making these services work for students, despite the limitations of buildings that are older, that were never designed to do those type elements. So if we look a little further into the Discovery School at Four Corners, 14 interchangeable classrooms. We'll look at the core facilities that are existence there, the administrative space. Even in the main office, it's certainly very tight where the administrative assistant is. Conference room space is limited. Teacher room, workroom space is very limited. And the nurse's office is not really handicap accessible. So again, those are some elements in long-term planning we definitely would want to consider. You'll see a plethora of support staff that are available at the Four Corners, and about the fifth bullet down, you'll start to see a list of support staff that are in inadequate spaces. Again, this is a very crowded space. Some of those support staff pull students into that area with them. Some may not. But either way, long-term planning-wise, we obviously want to create options that go around promoting opportunities for these individuals to be in more adequate spaces. Again, technology with what we talked about, major systems and maintenance, site information, and storage. So again, that is existent in every school that we looked at. The Newton Elementary School will go through very briefly, had some renovation in 2016, roof and sidewalks replaced in 2020, current enrollment of 211 students. There are modular classrooms at the Newton Elementary School. That is an aspect that certainly impacts planning long-term. The current operating capacity, we've set at 243 students, and the same with the planned operating capacity. Again, some of the major elements that we look for and try to give data on as far as how those facilities work, how they look, what it's looking like for space, how it's functioning, all those aspects. The Greenfield Middle School, similar situation, some fairly recent addition and renovation. Currently 361 students enrolled. We've got a total current operating capacity of 730 students, and the same for planned operating capacity. Again, some of the same elements listed throughout that report on the middle school. One aspect around the middle school that's important to remember, it is where central office is located. So that's important in any type of planning moving forward. Greenfield High School, certainly with a fairly recent renovation, is in very good shape in many ways. It has a current enrollment of 478 students. If we look at the current operating and planned capacity, looking at how a high school operates impacts how we look at that operating and planned capacity. The way a high school works, even though that it has typically more spaces, those spaces are dedicated at times to different content areas, different specific elements. There's an impact of scheduling at the high school level, where some courses may have large enrollment, other courses may have small enrollment. And that's why if you look at the bottom of this graph, we put in a programming utilization factor for high school classroom capacities, and that's a 0.8 element. If we added all those classrooms and just for utilization, we'd look at a capacity somewhere in the range of 986. When we multiply that times that utilization factor, that brings us down to a 788 operating capacity, and the same for planned operating capacity. So that's just a little different way to look at high schools compared to some of the straightforward elementary schools and even middle schools. But some of those same spaces, same elements that we've looked at and characterized for the high school. The Green River School, we thought was important to look at and to analyze. It is currently a vacant building. It did have some relatively recent renovation work, the doors, windows, roof insulation, and lighting. However, as I said, it is currently vacant. There are 8 classrooms. If that's, we use our maximum number for elementary classrooms, that would give us an operating capacity of 176 students, and that would match with the planned operating capacity. So again, we want to make sure we've identified this school, even though that it's vacant. But there are certainly complicated factors that come with the Green River School that aren't existent in the other schools. There is a major systems and infrastructure viability with potential upgrades in plumbing, restrooms, HVAC, doors, flooring, electrical, and Wi-Fi, renovation of classrooms, office spaces, and core facilities, gymnasium, and cafeteria. This would all have to be assessed by an architect and/or engineer to determine what it would cost and what the community's feeling is on bringing this school back into the fold. And so some of that information is very much an uncertainty at this time. But again, we have the minimal pieces directed on that follows with the other schools. But the fact that there is a vacant school in the district, we certainly did not want to not include that in our look. Using this information gained from the analysis of the enrollment projection coupled with the instructional program facility capacity analysis, NESDEC has analyzed potential alternatives for the district to review as it moves forward in the development of long-range planning. And I've already mentioned this in the front in the intro, but I think it's worth repeating that these options are designed to serve as a catalyst for further analysis and discussion. Thus, this document should be considered as not as an end product, but rather as a beginning point for future planning. We think that's very important. Option implementation typically takes a minimum of 1 to 2 years, and you can see as we go through some of these options that some of them would even look at longer term. But we want to make sure that we've identified kind of a broad range of options and elements rather than specific to-do lists. Option number 1, move grade 5 to the elementary level. Consider reconfiguring elementary schools to specific grade span schools. A K-1 school, a 2-3 school, and a 4-5 school, all across the 3 elementary schools. Move grade 8 to the middle school. So you can see there's some significant moving of students in there. If we look at the advantages, it affords more consistent class sizes and facilitation of collaboration, coordination, and communication amongst grade level educators. It brings grade 5 into the elementary schools. It affords more peer and family interaction with grade level students and ensures consistency and equity of opportunities and resources at each school for each grade span. It supports a middle school team model for grades 6 through 8. It affords opportunities for increased electives and/or alternative pathways for grades 9 through 12, and potential to increase support for special education program by coordinating programming by school. And it eases crowding at the elementary schools. Challenges around option 1. It eliminates K-4 neighborhood community schools. Consideration by constituents to determine the geographic location of the reconfigured grades K1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 schools. In other words, which elementary schools will support which grades. It increases student transitions from 3 transitions currently to 5. Continuing to address infrastructure systems needs as noted for each building. That's probably going to be consistent in any option we look at, is looking at the infrastructure and system needs for every building. Challenge of realigning staff, costs associated with movement of staff and programs, need to restructure and or expand some transportation routes, and increased travel time for some students and parents, and possibility of increased congestion during pickup and drop off. Again, that's a broad look at option 1. Option 2, consider realignment of elementary school boundaries to evenly distribute elementary school students across the elementary schools. In other words, make no changes about the schools and their function and their grade alignment right now, but realign the district map around what students go to what school, particularly at the K-4 level. Advantages of this: realignment of elementary school boundaries eases crowding at some of the elementary schools. Challenges: consideration by constituents to determine the realignment of elementary school boundaries. Who's making that decision on the boundaries? Some families would need to switch elementary schools. Challenge of realigning staff. Continuing to address infrastructure systems needs as noted for each building. Need to restructure and or expand some transportation routes and increase travel time for elementary students. So again, some of these challenges are consistent among the options. Some of them are more individualistic. Option 3, consider reopening the Green River School as a K-5 school. Move grade 5 to the elementary schools, move grade to the 8 to the middle schools. Again, similar to option 1 with adding the addition of an elementary school being Green River being brought online. Advantages of this option: it does bring Green River School back online. It eases crowding at the elementary school. It brings grade 5 into the elementary school. It affords more space at the middle school to support a middle school team model, and affords opportunities again for electives and alternative pathways for grades 9 through 12. The challenges: realignment of school boundaries to distribute grade K through 5 over 4 elementary schools as opposed to 3. Some families would need to switch elementary schools. Challenge of realigning staff. Cost associated with an engineering and architectural study of Green River School. Cost of renovation upgrade of Green River School. Timeline to complete upgrade of Green River School could be as much as 3 to 5 years. Again, continuing to address infrastructure system in all buildings, costs associated with movement of staff and programs, restructuring of transportation, and increased travel time and pickup and drop-off issues for students. Option 4, consider adding on to the elementary schools to ease crowding. Move grade 5 to the elementary school, move grade 8 to the middle school. Advantages: additions eases crowding at the elementary schools. Bring grade 5 to the elementary school. Afford more space for middle school support in a school team model for grades 6 to 8, and the opportunities for increased electives and alternative pathways at grades 9 through 12. The challenges: the cost of an addition to an elementary school, the need to ensure that the site can accommodate an addition, the process timeline for project approval and construction of an addition could likely be 3 to 5 years. Continuing to address infrastructure, system needs is noted for each building, challenge of realigning staff, cost associated with moving staff and programs, need to restructure and expand transportation. So again, some of these challenges are consistent on all of these options, but it's really an opportunity for Greenfield Public Schools to look at these options and to add the Greenfield view on them. Really, if any of these became fruition, it would require several other decisions to be made, a great amount of community input, and a lot of work on everyone's behalf. We commend Greenfield Public Schools for commissioning the study. The town is engaged in a thoughtful database planning, prudent of available resources. Planning for municipal and school needs begins with a firm grounding in community data, accurate forecasting of future population and school enrollment. We hope that's what we've provided you in this report. And at this time, we are open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you both very much, and I'll open it up to the full committee for questions. I saw Secretary Ekstrom's hand first. Go ahead.
Hi. Excuse me. Thank you for this report. I'm curious, looking at option 1, assuming that all costs for Green River to be improved upon or brought up to date would be included as a con, why is it that Green River wasn't included in, I guess maybe the larger question is, why wasn't that considered an option throughout all of them and was only actually included in one of the options?
Because we considered it as a standalone option. You could modify these as they fit your needs going forward, but we wanted to acknowledge the specific advantages and challenges associated with reopening Green River, specifically in that one option. So that's why we did it that way. But you certainly could reopen Green River and add that to any of these if that was what was decided going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Member Johnson Musad, go ahead.
So many questions. Thank you so much for this thorough report. It's really fascinating. Let's see, I guess I just took notes as we were going through and made notes of questions. So my first one, I think, is slide 21. Oh, nope, slide 14. Sorry. In the population, it says under 18 and under 5 years. So when it says under 18 years, that also includes people who are under 5 years, or is it age?
That's correct.
And why is it broken out that way as the other ages? It's kind of like, I guess I'm just curious how that is factored.
That's the way the U.S. Census breaks out ages.
I see. Okay. Thank you. I guess that's the reason why, because the U.S. Census said so. And on slide 21, it talks about millennials downsizing. Can you explain why millennials are downsizing?
Oh, my apologies. That should say mature buyers.
Okay, great, thank you.
My apologies. We'll actually fix that for you and send an updated copy. My apologies.
Okay, great. And on slide 28, is the general trend that our population is going up, but enrollment is going down? Is that a fair way of summarizing what's happening on slide 28?
The population went up, has been stable, 17,500 over the past 10 years. There was a blip in 2020. I think it was 17,700, say. I don't have it right with me. So that the population is aging. Also, you saw that slide. So it could be that people are moving in and don't have families that are school age.
I see. Okay, thank you. On slide 37, what does the adjust for parity equity among all buildings? Can you flesh that out a little bit?
Yes, so when you look at when we take a classroom offline, as we did for Discovery Center at Four Corners, we adjust for the parity and equity among school buildings because, as you know, some of the buildings do have enough classroom space for specialists, for art and music and those types of things. So that's how we adjust.
Okay, thank you. And on slide 93, it talks about the possibility of incorporating grade 5 to the elementary level. So I guess it would be our job or our purview to kind of look at the educational outcomes. Like, is there research that shows whether having grade 5 with those younger grades is better in terms of student outcomes? Or is that also something you're knowledgeable about or anyone could tell us about?
We've actually seen models where the fifth grade is at the elementary level. We've also seen models where fifth grade is at the middle school. It's a district-based decision, certainly going forward, if that's a consideration to go to the K-5 model, which is most prevalent in the state of Massachusetts.
Okay, so I don't know if the superintendent knows, has there actually been research done on whether one model or the other is better for student outcomes?
I haven't looked yet.
Okay.
One of the big drivers for the question that was posed about, do we move grade 5 back to the elementary, were concerns about, the adjustment, the maturity level of grade 5 students being at the middle school, just whether or not they were still a better match for an elementary structure.
Yeah.
Once they get to the middle school, even though we have 3 teams and there's less movement, there's still, transition and looking at whether or not grade 5 students in general are ready for that environment. So there were requests. Families had shared some concern about grade 5 at the middle school, so we felt like it was worth looking at to see if it was feasible to make that adjustment. As totally informal, I was also told that prior, when grade 4 was moved back to the elementary levels, there had been discussion about moving grade 5 at that time, but it wasn't able to be done. So sort of revisiting what had been seemingly a previous priority that wasn't able to be done.
I see, okay. On slide 96, it talks about evenly distributing elementary school students across the elementary schools. Is that a even geographic distribution or what? Or just meaning approximately the same number of elementary school students in each school?
Right, so it's a balance of enough kindergartners, first, second, third, fourth, across the elementary schools. So when you realign the school boundaries, you can shift some second graders, shift some fifth graders. So that's what that is looking at.
So that you have, kind of an optimum number of students in each school, but shifting boundaries means essentially shifting geographic boundaries.
Correct.
Okay. And I think I have one more question, slide 99. Let's find out what that question was. How does option 3 afford opportunities for increased electives and/or alternative pathways for grades 9 through 12?
We put this in several of them because the 8th grade will move to the middle school, and that will free up space for the district to think about increasing electives or to determine if there are alternate pathways for grades 9 through 12. There is a cost associated with that, but it's something to consider.
You mean if there's more physical space at the high school, it allows there to be more specialized classes or breakouts or just flexible use of space? Is that why?
Exactly.
Okay, great. And then I guess I'll just have one comment that, I really was, a little bit upset about slide 52 and seeing that about the inaccessibility of the nurses station, and wow, that is intense. And I think it really speaks to the importance, Superintendent, of what you're talking about, bringing us through the schools. We really do need to see all of these spaces, and I think the summer's a good time to see them, the spaces, and look at that, but also I think we may need to look as a school committee at kind of developing a program for the school committee to be just seeing the insides of the schools on a more regular basis, both when school's in session and when it's not. But thank you very much for your report and for your answers to the questions.
Other school committee members have questions? Mayor Rita Gardner, go ahead.
Mine is not so much a question as it is a comment. What I see, and thank you for this report, it's excellent and a long time coming, and it really is good information that I hope we can get out to the full community at some point. Yeah.
As soon as the corrected version that Karen's going to send, we'll put it on the website.
Yeah, we wouldn't want millennials to be concerned about their downsizing.
We would not, no. But that'll be posted on the website.
Yeah, okay, yeah, well, I'll make note of making sure that people get, we can use social media to do that and so forth, so.
I'm very happy to send it over to Aaron or
Yeah,
to Caitlin to put on
that'd
the
be great.
city website as well.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten to my comment yet, but as things pop into my mind, it's a good thing to say them, well, most of the time anyway. So when you do the invitation to the school committee to go through the facilities, please include Counselor Forgy, who's Chair of Ways and Means, on that. I mean, all the counselors really, but specifically perhaps Counselor Forgy, because that's where the money is.
I'd be quite happy to do that.
So actually, it does relate to my comment. What I see when I look at this is a lot of capital expenditure, and that's not a criticism. It's just a fact. And whether it's in certain types of equipment, the technology piece we know, redoing in some capacity nurses' stations, at least temporarily, or nursing areas, because it was in more than one place, really, that was the case. But overall, just how, whichever option we choose, there's going to be a fairly significant capital investment. So it really does need to be planned out, because that's the way we do our capital thing. Isn't that right, Jean? And we are, we have a lot of capital projects out there. So it bears remembering that we have to keep that in mind. I know we will, but I'm just saying it kind of came as a glaring. It's been a long time since we've invested in our schools. So that's going to be something that we have to sell. I mean, the high school was extraordinary, and I think people thought, well, okay, we're done now. But that's not the case. You have to start all over again. So
I think yes, there's a lot of capital projects that are embedded in this, and even if the committee were not to choose to change anything, we still would have a lot of capital to do. So I think one of the pieces that we have the opportunity to consider is, if the committee chooses to do any of these changes, does that provide us with the opportunity to use space we have differently, which would address some of those? Like, I don't know if this is feasible, but as an example, can we move a nurse's suite to a place that is handicapped accessible in any of our schools and eliminate that problem? But we may need to look at the big picture of reconfiguring, because right now, especially at Four Corners, as you see, all space is used. So we certainly can't put the art class in the current nurses' suite, but we can, so I think there's some opportunity to address some capital with the potential of reconfiguring, but absolutely, we're going to need to have a lot of conversations about multi-year planning. You may remember one of the costs that the committee has absorbed this year is the cost to put a lift on, to have a portable wheelchair lift for Four Corners. And that was from a complaint lodged, if I'm not mistaken, more than 10, 15 years ago that we're addressing. So that's been ordered, but that's but one piece that we're dealing with, so.
Member Deneve, go ahead.
I'm so excited, Dr. DeBarge, that a tour is possible. I know I emailed you about that a while ago, so I've been on that. But I did speak to at least half of the city council, and the ones I spoke to, said that they would love to be involved in a tour. So I'm glad that the mayor has brought that up. My question for NESDEC is this the only chance to ask questions? Because this is a mighty document, and I would like to take it home and read it again and think of questions. Is this our only opportunity, or will they be back? Could we write our questions to them?
The way that, go ahead, Karen. Thank you.
Christine, thank you. What we usually do is you can channel those questions through the superintendent, and we can respond in writing to her.
Thank you so much. I'm sure some will come to all of us as we digest this.
Other questions? Member Martini, go ahead.
I had a similar kind of, eye pop, I guess, to Glenn's observation about that nurses station, but with the inadequate spaces at some of our schools for services for students with disabilities. I think it's really disturbing that we have multiple special education teachers, math coach, another special educator, speech and language services, Title I services, math interventionists, reading interventionists, all that have inadequate space. And I was really particularly dismayed that our elementary school with the highest number of English language learners has a space that can only accommodate 1 to 3 students. For their full-time ELL educators. So I would really like to understand more specifically how each of these options would impact students with disabilities and this problem.
Thank you for that. Other questions? Anything you guys want to add? Okay.
Karen and I and Jean, who is the chair of the ad hoc committee around this, we had the opportunity to review a draft and to ask questions. So we were overwhelmed previously. So
yeah.
I appreciate the response of all the rest of the committee members. So I feel justified in my initial. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, NESDEC folks, for your amazing work on this. And I most of all appreciated the speed at which you can fly through slides. I'm going to recommend that to everyone who presents to us in the future, because we need more of that. But the content is amazing, and we're very grateful for your work. And thank you for joining us this evening and going over it and answering our questions.
Thank you for the opportunity to partner with the Greenfield Public Schools and the town. So we look forward to our continued collaboration.
Thank you.
Night.
Night.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Do you know how to shut it off?
Well, what I think is that I click end. So.
Yeah, and there it is.
I did it.
Right.
Unplug it quick.
I will shut it, and
Okay.
that, I believe, is all that is required. I'll be right back.
Can I just ask one other question?
Sure, please go ahead.
I just wonder where the district is in terms of bathrooms and gendered bathrooms versus, all gender bathrooms. How are those done in the schools? I have no idea. Do we have?
I don't know.
Can wait for the superintendent to come back.
I don't want to burn out the big TV and get myself in trouble with Fernando. I'd be in big trouble, right?
Big trouble.
No, I am not going to do that. So the high school and middle school both have gender-neutral facilities available. I am not aware that elementary has them available at this point, but I know high school and middle school both do.
What
are we talking about?
Gender-neutral bathrooms.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Don't the elementary schools have standalone bathrooms? Like I can't remember. It's been a while since I've been in them.
I will be quite honest, I don't typically look at the bathrooms when I visited the elementary. So I'd have to revisit that, but it's a good point to have in consideration as we look at some of this, what the opportunities are for facilities. You know, generally, the nurses' offices have a standalone bathroom, but as we saw, some of them do not have restrooms connected to them, so something to keep looking at.
Member Martini, is it about the bathrooms?
It's about the facilities.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Not those facilities, but I wondered if if any of these options are going to touch on administrative space, like the central office, or is that assumed that it's going to just stay the same across all these different options?
Well, interesting you say that. NESDEC could have presented some options that would have done things with administration, but at the end of the day, any of the options that would have moved us didn't really have much impact on the student configuration, which was certainly the priority. So it sort of moved a problem, but didn't necessarily resolve anything. So that was basically it. Didn't really fix much.
I actually have a related question to that. Okay. Would you ever consider being located in a building outside of a school if you had that opportunity?
I have.
As long as it was centrally located enough to accommodate most of our parents.
To be truthful, I haven't given my physical location one bit of thought since I started. I don't care. I don't have a particular preference. I think the biggest issue that needs to be looked at when we talk about changes in the structure is really what the impact is on students. So that was really the biggest issue. If people want to talk about a move for us, but I mean, I know central office just moved and some construction work was done to make office spaces work, so sort of would hate to undo and have to take down the walls that were built and all of that type of thing, but if it had some impact on students and that was the decision, I don't feel territorial about my space at all.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sure.
Any further questions on this topic for tonight? All right. Where were we?
Actually,
we were so excited we didn't even vote to move the...
Wait, yes, can I ask one more?
One more.
I assume, although I don't want to, that we're going to get together and talk about this again in the future. Like, this is not our
going on a
only
shelf.
discussion.
We might get it a frame, but it's just going on a shelf.
Okay,
No, absolutely. We're going to... I mean, that's a good question. So, one of the things that we've wanted to do and we started and then stopped was our conversations around changes to the district configuration for the elementary schools. There's been parent interest in looking at start times for the middle school and high school and all of that stuff, and we do need to restart the work and have this be what informs it, and we'll at the subcommittee level begin to do that now. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. We had our administrative reports. Report of the chair. Excuse me. The pollen's getting to me. I don't have a report, as I generally do not, but I do want to just, like many have done, is just tonight, just say some thank yous for the end of the year. I want to mention our partner GCTV, who have just been astounding in helping us, whether it's remote or it's in person or it's what we think is some combination of the two or not. They've just always been willing to work with us through 2020, 2021, and now 2022, and things appear to be getting a little smoother, but they've been great partners for us. And I want to thank the school committee members that were able to go to graduation. That's great to represent. I hear that it was fantastic for multiple people, and I think the biggest hit, she left the room, but the biggest hit was the superintendent's less than 2-minute long speech, I think, was probably the part that people love the most. And I want to recognize the softball and track folks. Rock on, right?
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And I hear Tess Rancourt is going to Merrimack to do the shot put there. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. And I want to also recognize and thank Mel Goodwin, who's been the principal at Newton School for years now, and she's retiring. And I do see her on the social media posting different fun things about how excited she is to retire. And I'll remind everyone that my only goal in life is to retire. So I understand, and I appreciate Mel and all the work she's put into Newton School. The families there really love her. The students love her, and it will be a big change, big shoes for Darlene to fill. Yes, looking forward to meeting her. And then I've been meaning to actually, I don't usually do a report, so I don't have the opportunity to do this, but I've been meaning to actually recognize where we're at as a district because of our leadership team in the district. And the superintendent and ASKP haven't even been in place for us for a year yet, if you can believe it, because I know most days I can't believe that Christine didn't start until August 25th, was it? 26th, my parents' wedding anniversary, I should know that. Okay, and Karen was, has been here and has provided that stability that we needed in leadership. And to see where we're at now, I had envisioned in my head we would probably be playing catch up and stabilizing the district for at least a year. And I'm already seeing and have been seeing for some time now those pushes forward with the things that we're doing in terms of instruction and in terms of professional development for teachers and responsiveness to the community and all the things that we've really wanted and knew that we can do. And here we are. And I just want to really thank the two of you and your team for all of you've been doing to move us forward. And I look forward to continuing the work continuing the work. Let's leave it there. Yeah. So that's my report. Subcommittee reports, do we have? Yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
Just a brief one. The policy subcommittee did meet, and we were excited to have it posted on GCTV with our new policy or our new program of posting subcommittee meetings online. So thank you to the superintendent and GCTV for working together to make that happen. And if you, for some reason, missed the midday policy subcommittee meeting and you're very eager to watch some scintillating television, tune into GCTV for that. We're continuing our work in reviewing our policies with the assistance of Massachusetts Association of School Committees. We don't have new work to present to you tonight, but we're hoping over the summer some more bandwidth will open up to bring some more things to you. And one other policy item that we're looking at is we have a policy about the organization of the school committee subcommittees, and it kind of has some blank spots in it presented, I don't know, somehow the information got left out, so we're taking a fresh look at that, also with the assistance of MASC. The superintendent's doing some research and legwork on that. But if folks have thoughts about how the school committee, subcommittees should be organized, either members of the school committee or the members of the public, certainly let the superintendent or the policy committee know. We always have public comment at our meetings, and we are going to be scheduling one for July, so watch for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Glenn for the policy subcommittee? All right. And I don't think any other subcommittees were meeting, and the next one would be budget update anyway. Andy is not with us tonight, but we can certainly do any questions or comments on budget. Mayor Wiedegardner.
Yeah, I do have some, and it's end of the year, so the city and the school department participates in that FY22 end of year. So I'm looking at these, and I guess and these are just questions. And perhaps if Andy had been here and presented, he may have been already answered them, and I wouldn't have to ask. But so what I'm obviously most concerned about looking at right this minute is the bottom line on page 11, and that is the $1,006,2014.03, which is a significant deficit. And what concerns me most about that is that any school general fund deficit affects, basically whacks, I guess is a good word, our free cash. So what I'm looking at then is the amounts in the revolving funds, so the 646K in special student tuition, the $1 million in the circuit breaker, and the school choice receiving tuition of $1+ million. And I'm wondering, is there a plan to move some money from anywhere, but in particular those larger numbers in the revolving funds, to the general fund, your bottom line of minus $1.6 million, in order to bring that number down?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
yes, no?
Yes.
What kind of an answer was that?
Very clearly, yes, there is. And actually, at this point, Andy's not able to be here. He had an emergency that he had to work around, but I have notes. And actually, that addressed that exact piece.
Yeah.
In that, based on what we have right now, after reclassing to those accounts, as we do, many of our special education costs get reclassed to those accounts, meaning we take money out of those and use it to offset local. We are projecting a preliminary balance right now of just over $200,000. So we are still in the process of closing out open POs. We're in the process of addressing any staffing changes and, taking care of salary that had been encumbered. So this is definitely, the next couple of weeks are very hectic in terms of the closeout. So based on what we have right now, we do anticipate that we would have addressed any of that.
Okay, so when you say a preliminary balance of just right at or just over 200,000, balance where? On your
in the revolving, it would remain. We would take care of eliminating any deficit that's reflected in local
from revolving funds.
Correct.
Yeah, after you do the reclassification.
Yes.
Well, that's good. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
I
knew as soon as you started your question that
was
I had
a wonderful
the crib
answer
note for it. Yes, absolutely.
All I hear all day long. Well, that's not all I hear all day long. I hear a lot of stuff. But end of year, don't bother me. I'm doing end of year.
Yes, we feel the same on our side.
Sure.
And except my message is close the POs, close the POs, close the POs.
Pay bills.
So,
okay. Thanks. Thank you. a lot.
So the mayor took the question right out of my mouth, and your answer was actually what I was expecting. The flip side of that being, is it that any of the ESSER funding will be, are we eligible to apply some of that to this? Because when I look at this, I see, 171,000 contracted services. I know what most of those were. And, well, I know it, from looking at all of the warrants, I have a good idea of what those contracted services were.
Yeah.
And in many instances, or not many instances, but certainly that was as a direct result of COVID and being out of schools and things like that. And so I'm just curious if that's feeding into some of these.
So some of what we've done, we obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. ESSER 1 was written and it's primarily used to offset the costs of reopening schools. So some of those funds were taking care of facilities, expenses, cleaning supplies, things like that. We've continued to use some of that money for the masking, the disinfecting the air filter replacements for the classroom air filters, things along those lines. We also are using some of that grant for summer school. So I guess the short answer is the grant is written for particular things that was approved by DESE. So unless some of these expenses, we do look to see if anything that is appropriate to the grant has inadvertently been charged to a local line, in which case we do make an adjustment in that. But right now, at this point, ESSER 1 has been written, approved, and is almost completely expended based on how it was originally written. So some of the special education costs that were not anticipated, that we've had to support students in ways that we didn't anticipate, that was not part of the ESSER grant. So those are being addressed by district funds and by some of the special education revolving accounts. Sure. As a point, if I may, just
please.
As we have some staffing changes and come to end of the year, Karen and I and Andy will look at the ESSER grants 2 and 3 to see how they're written, determine if those needs are still the most prevalent that we have, and then if need arise, we will adjust and amend or rewrite completely, depending on the case may be. Hard to project in September of 20 what our needs in June of 24 might be, but certainly as we've said before, and I will continue to say, our goal is to get any of the staff positions that have been grant funded into the local so that we can maintain those positions. So those will be things that we continue to work on, but we have to close out this one first.
You have significant balances in those left, and it's wise to not spend it all at once, for sure, so.
I will say
Nice
that's one place I feel very, very comfortable in how we've planned to allocate the ESSER funds and not created. I do not feel that we have created a funding cliff by using that money for so many staff positions that we will decimate resources at the end of the grant. I feel like we've balanced, infrastructure and technology and some staffing and professional development. I think we've done a very nice job balancing how that funding is used and spreading it out across the entire grant period. So that's a place I'm very pleased with how we've allocated that.
Thank you.
The mayor looks like.
I had a question related to grants, but I can
Go
wait.
ahead.
Okay. I just, do you have somebody who manages your grants? I mean, what's the situation? Because I know you talked about it today. You got even more grants, and so I know you have a lot of them. So.
Karen writes and oversees the title grants, and she and I manage the ESSER grants, and then Janet writes and oversees the special education and Title III, which supports students, English language learners.
Okay.
And of course, Andy meets with us to review all grants, writing, expenditures, and planning.
Just curious, making sure.
Member Johnson-Musat, go ahead.
I was trying to remember if it would have been you who wrote the ESER 2 and 3 grants, or if that was you. You two together, yeah, okay. But again, you're writing so far in advance, and then you do have the opportunity to revise based on the emerging needs and so on.
Yeah, we're trying to, meaning I'm trying not to ask Karen to amend the grants because I can feel her eyes burning into the back of my head as we speak. It's not the most user-friendly platform, and
Sure.
so we really are trying to be very planful, and if we have to amend, hoping to do it as a one-time activity and not continue. And there's limited numbers of times we can actually submit amendments, so to the positive, it requires us to be very planful, but I feel very confident that we are, so that's...
Okay, and there's been some fears with a tranche of the ARPA funds, the state and local fiscal recovery funds, that a different Congress might try to claw some of those funds back. Have there been any fears about that for the ESER? Have you heard anything, any worries about that?
I have not. None of the superintendent meetings that I attend have addressed that, and until you just brought it up, I had not been fearful of it, so I thank you for that. But no, I haven't heard anything about that from an educational standpoint.
There is a concerted effort, I'm sure Glenn knows about this, in the MMA and with Mass Municipal Association to fight any attempts to do that, but it is a very real thing. As far as I know, I've only heard associated with ARPA, not ESSER, so who knows? So sleep better.
Thank you.
Let us worry about it.
Okay, deal.
Any further questions about the budget? All right. We've got a few transactional items here. So the first one, item 8 on the agenda, I'm going to introduce it, the vote to raise pay for the summer food service workers. And Christine, you interrupt me if I do it wrong, if I misrepresent anything. But it was brought to our attention that we needed to increase the structure for the pay for the various grades of food service workers for the summer because it had fallen below where it should be. And there is a memo in the materials that outlines what we're looking to do. And I would entertain a motion to increase the pay rate for summer 2022 for our food service workers as outlined in the June 7 memo from the superintendent. Anyone want to make that motion?
So moved.
That was Member Martini. Perfect. And a second? And Member Deneve. And any discussion? Secretary Ekstrom, go ahead.
I'm just curious, is this to bring it in line with what we did with the cafeteria workers during the school year?
Basically, what Greta highlighted is that the summer rates, if we kept them consistent with last summer, the summer rates would have fallen below their school year rates of pay.
So yes.
Yes, I was so brief with the mayor's response, succinct in my response to the mayor. I figured I'd expand on my answer to you.
I don't know, I would have enjoyed yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? We'll move to a vote. Any no votes? Any abstentions? So that passes unanimously. And thank you to our food service workers, as always. And the next item is kind of similar. We just need to change something. We have a school committee piece that happens with the sick bank, which is for Unit A of the GEA, correct? And in the past, we've had a committee structure in the school committee to manage the piece that falls within the school committee's purview. And there's really not a need for that. And we would like to change it to a model where we have one sick leave bank representative for the school committee, which we've done with other things. And then what this does for us is it just eases the administrative burden. It allows for more responsiveness if there is a need for a meeting. When more than one school committee member is involved in anything, you actually have to post it as a meeting and follow all the open meeting law guidelines. And for something that is so administrative like this, there's really no need. That was probably more of an introduction that I needed to give it. I'm sorry. But I would entertain a motion to change the sick leave bank structure within the school committee to a representative model instead of a subcommittee.
So move.
Oh, and it's specifically, we already have someone that does this. I should have mentioned that.
Well, there's two members identified as the subcommittee.
Right now.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if we could have whoever the primary would be.
Yeah, and I think it
would
makes sense
appreciate
because Glenn has continued, that was in my head, Glenn has done this in previous years, so we would have him continue as the representative, and we should put that in the motion. So move to change the school committee's responsibilities with the GEA sick leave bank from a subcommittee structure to a representative model, which for 2022 would have Glenn Johnson-Musad be our representative.
So move.
And that was Member Wall?
Second.
And the mayor is the second. And Susan Farber, do you have what you need?
Yes, although you said the first motion and then you repeated it with quite different words.
I did, because I had to include, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Secretary Ekstrom, discussion?
Yeah, we've worked actually to keep these things fairly generic so that if someone were to, for whatever reason, need to abdicate their role,
Abdicate, yep.
then we don't have to have another session to talk about it. So in this case, if Glenn were unavailable, is there another person that could attend? And if he is named as that person,
That's a really
within
good
the
point.
minutes,
We've had
then
an
he
alternate
would
with
attend.
other models. Who's the person now? Is it Elizabeth? Is it Kate? So we could have an alternate model, and Kate would be the alternate?
I'm saying just leave names out.
Well, for this year, we have to have someone. That's why. Because
that's
it's
fine.
already decided,
But do we have to have their name included in the motion, I guess is what I'm driving at.
just to make it solid, just so we know what we're doing.
Okay.
So when someone questions it from the GEA, we can look back and say, this is what we did.
That's fine. I just.
Yeah, I want to include it in there just because it makes it cleaner.
Okay.
Member Martini, would you be willing to serve as the alternate?
Well, yes, but it looks like Glenn has his finger on the button and has something to say.
Glenn, go ahead, yes.
I wonder if Member Martini would consider being the designee and I could be the alternate?
Sure.
Oh, there we go, yeah, totally fine. And it sounds like from the response, everyone would agree to that friendly amendment. And Susan Farber, you have what you need for the change, so we're good. Is there any further discussion? All right, we'll move to a vote. Any no votes? Any abstentions? So that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And here we are, where I said, oh, I can do the rest without my reading glasses, and I put them away. Number 10, oh, okay, so this is the vote. The school committee does approve, as a matter of business, when there's trips outside of the U.S., or maybe the continental U.S. I'm struggling with this because Puerto Rico is a territory, so we're still in the U.S., yeah.
The school committee policy does indicate
It's
that.
overnight.
Correct.
Overnight
So
trips. I didn't know that.
do you need to do the added agenda item, or are you?
I'm
together.
gonna put it together. So we had a late ad that we allowed on the agenda for the second trip for Puerto Rico, which is not included on the original or the revised agenda because we just added it today. And I should clarify that all we're doing at this point is saying, yeah, you can start planning so that they can get actual costs, they know who's planning to attend, they can start making specific reservations and whatnot. So all we're doing is saying, yep, go ahead and plan on your trip. And these would be in April of 2023. And I would take a motion, and then we can discuss. I move the school committee approve student travel in April 2023 for both the Montreal, Quebec, and the Puerto Rico trips as, outlined in the submitted field trip requests.
Second.
Okay. I guess that was me. Yeah, I did make a motion. Okay. And a second from Member John Zon. And any discussion? All right, we'll move to a vote. Any no votes? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously and without discussion, which is wonderful for our students. Okay. I'm going to guess, okay. So the presentation we already had was item 11. And here we are ready to move into executive session. I would like a motion to enter into executive session for exemption reasons numbers 2, 3, and 7. 2 is to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. And exemption reason number 7 is to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements. This is the approval of executive session minutes from 2 previous meetings. The committee will not return to open session. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
So
moved.
That was the mayor, and who seconded?
only if we can move outside where it's warm.
We're going to go to our special room for...
It's even colder, I think.
Oh, I opened the door. I hoped it would get warmer in there. I'm sorry. Okay, so we do have to do a roll call vote for this.
Who seconded this?
Member Deneve, I believe? Yeah.
Member Deneve.
Yes.
Secretary Ekstrom, yes. Member Johnson Masad.
Yes.
Member Martini.
Yes.
Chair Prietti.
Yes.
Vice Chair Wall.
Yes.
Mayor Wiegner.
Yes.
And thank you. And a motion to adjourn the public session, please.
So move. Second.
Okay, any discussion of that? Any no votes? Any abstentions?
I'm not a no vote. I was pointing at her.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, and that is a unanimous vote to adjourn the public session at 8:01 p.m. Thank you, everyone.